We're live! Welcome on into this edition of War Chant TV. It's a recruiting edition of War Chant TV. You know that because Michael Langston is here, recruiting analyst for warchant.com. We'll be taking plenty of questions from the premium recruiting board, which is open to all of our valued subscribers of warchant.com. If you're not already a member of the Ultimate Seminole Sports Source, use the promo code WARCHANT30. 30 free days to try it out, see how much you like it. Because it's not whether or not they'll like it, Michael, it's how much they'll like it.
Exactly.
Yeah. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Just had to handle some family stuff today. My mom had surgery, but everything's good. Appreciate everyone's concerns. Everyone gave a lot of nice, prayers, requests, and everything. But she had to have surgery on her neck. She's fine. She's doing good, and she's in recovery right now. So hopefully they'll let her go home soon. But that's kind of been taking my focus at least today, but I just wanted to make sure I let everyone know, appreciate all the love. FSU staff members hit me up and they knew about it, and so they were talking about how they were praying for us. So but everything's fine, so now we can rock solid on recruiting.
Right on, man. All right, well, good vibes to Mama Langston, man. Hope everything heals and mends up perfectly, my friend.
Yep.
All right, so we'll take maybe some calls. The way this will work, folks, if you want to call, you can call in. I'm lacking some sort of hardware that I need. I finally figured it all out, everybody. You'd all be proud of me. But you can call in. Michael will be able to hear you. You won't be able to hear Michael. So you can call in and you can hang up and listen to his answer. Or you can call in, ask your question, and you can come back and listen to it on the replay. I'll maybe give a shout out at what time in the show we're taking it. That way you can scrub. Oh, hey, look at that. We already have a phone call, Michael. So somebody's brave enough to do this. So I think it might be our friend from Virginia. Let's take it right here. Welcome on into the Michael Langston, warchant.com recruiting chat. Who we got on the line?
Hey, Aslan, what's going on?
What is that? Is it Gator Kirk?
Yeah, it's Gator Kirk. How you doing?
Dude, Gator Kirk, Michael, is like throwing a perfect game. I think every time we do one of these live things, he's the first person to call in. I don't know if you heard me describe how we're going to do this today, Kirk, but you can ask your question to Michael. You won't be able to actually hear him, so you can ask your question and hang up if you'd like to do it that way.
All right, no worries.
Yeah.
I find it funny y'all won't ever call me by my first name.
What is your first name?
It's Gator.
It's just your first name is not Gator.
It's one of my middle names, so it's one of my legal names.
Well, it's a Florida State show. We're not calling you Gator, Mr. Kirk.
I understand.
What would you like to ask
so call me
Langston?
G. So call me G or call me Gate, like my friends do.
All right.
Anyway,
All right.
here's my question. Do you think for this recruiting cycle we'll actually go after another quarterback, even though Altmaier's committed? And I don't know if you all know that the dead period was just extended to July 31st.
Oh, no. Really?
Yeah.
Is that true, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd heard that. Thanks for the question. I'm going to call you Captain Kirk, but I don't say Gator on this show. But anyway, we really appreciate that. Yes, they just extended probably about 10 minutes ago before we even take this that they're extending the dead period to July 31st, which is not a total shock to me because most places we hear, schools are going to start doing workouts in June. So that gives them time to get accommodated in June, get everything situated. And after that, probably, August 1st, I think they're going to be hosting recruits. So that's not like a total shocker to me, just because you give coaches time to settle into, what they're doing as far as recruiting and it gets them prepared, and so they're not having so much stuff on their plate. Plus, it gives you time with the pandemic to make sure everything's perfect and kosher. So, yes, that did happen. As far as another quarterback, right now, I don't think that's a major priority to FSU. Will they go after another one if the right guy fits? Yeah, I can see that. I've mentioned Jake Garcia, the Southern Cal commit before, and he's a guy that I think FSU feels that if they push for, they could get. But right now, I don't get the sense that they're really pushing hard for another quarterback in this class, at least right now. Now, that could change. but they're pretty excited about Luke, and I think they're pretty set on if he's the only guy they get, they'd feel very, very comfortable with that. But as of right now, I don't see them pushing, but I'm not going to rule it out because you never know if the numbers work out where they think they can do it, and there's a guy that they really want, they feel his skill set fits what they want to do, then they might make a run. But as of right now, I'd say no.
All right. We got a question from YouTube from Nick Betts, Michael. What's the latest on JT Daniels, since we're talking about quarterbacks, right? Naturally.
JT Daniels. This is a weird one because I usually get from the FSU contacts, yes, we're active, no, we're not active. This is one of the rare situations where FSU's really gone dark and quiet on this situation, and nobody really knows. I mean, some people think like LSU, who doesn't really have a set starter, could be a team to watch. I think you have to consider FSU, even though they've, Norvell has hinted that he's not going to take another transfer, but I think this is a little bit different because of the relationship with Kenny Dillingham, the relationship with Norvell. They know each other. They know what his skill set is. Now, I think it's something that I'll monitor. I haven't heard anything new. I'd love to tell you guys some new information, but there isn't really anything new. That's the only thing I can tell you is that's a very rare situation where I don't hear that FSU is either active or, hey, that's not a guy we're probably going to push for. So they're being very, very quiet for that. So that piques my interest even more with the quietness. So it's just something I'm going to keep hammering away and see if there's anything there. I'm probably going to check with a few sources that I feel that would definitely know if they're going after another, or if they're listening to him, at least talking. That's kind of what I'm going to check on. But as of right now, they've kept the thing really quiet.
All right, Michael, we've taken a phone call. We've taken a question from a listener, viewer on YouTube. Let's go to the important people. Not that we don't love everybody, but, it's the way life works, everybody. There's people that are more important than others. Our friends over on the premium recruiting board on warchant.com. This question comes from Smiley Knoll. Been around since 2002. Thanks, Smiley. Appreciate that. Michael, here we go. Any JUCO offensive tackle recruits that we are looking at that could play this fall? There are some. Oh, just totally had to jump around here. Oh, everything's going sideways now. There are some that have not signed yet. Please don't say I don't have any names. So let's start there. JUCO offensive tackles.
Yeah, I think he's referring to 2020. I have not heard any that are left over that they could add yet. Now, 2021, I do have some names for you. I've been telling people that I'm working on names where I feel there's either mutual interest or there's some guys that I expect FSU, based on my source of what they're telling me, that I expect FSU to hit up in 2021. I think here's a few of them. I got 2 or 3. One's DeMarcus Gordon. He's from Copia over there at Lincoln and JUCO. He's a guy that I think would have 2 years left. He's got connection with Thompson. He definitely, what I hear, he knows Dillingham, so that's certainly one to watch. And then another one is Richard Rodriguez, another JUCO. He's out of Iowa. He's a guy that I think has ties to Dillingham as well. Like I said, when Dillingham took over, Dillingham has a lot of connections to the JUCO ranks. So I think those are 2 that are certainly going to be on the radar. He's 6'5", 320 pounds. He also has 2 years, from what I hear. DeMarcus Gordon is 6'6" or 6'5", maybe 320 pounds. And then another one that I hear a lot of buzz about is, and he's been brought up on the message boards, is Caleb Epstein. He's originally out of Louisiana. David Johnson has some good connections with him, from what I hear. I think there's going to be mutual interest there. He's another one, a massive kid, 6'7", 323. Good length, can do all those things. Another kid that will have 2 years left. Those are the 3 names I hear. Now I'll throw in the bonus guy here, because I covered this kid in high school when I was because I'm local and I'm born and raised here. I hear a lot of buzz. There's another kid. His name is Anthony Benton. He's out of played at Florida High. So he didn't make the grade. So he had most kids from the Tallahassee area go to Georgia Military, and that's currently where he's at. I wouldn't put him in the 3 with those guys, but I think he's a guy to monitor because there's connections. You could be closer to home. He's also a guy around 6'5", 320 from what I hear, and he's a guy that I think would have interest if FSU decided to make a push there. So 2021, those are some names that I've kind of heard, people I've talked to that from the FSU circle, things that have told me, to kind of watch for FSU to be active there. Now, as far as the second part of the question, how many total defensive linemen we signed this year, I think they would like to get 2 to 4 defensive tackles that they can, and then around 2 or 3 defensive ends, more likely 3 for defensive ends if they can. Those are they want to load up on the defensive tackle position. So I think that's a position where you see them probably sign like 3 or 4 if I had to guess. Because I think there's JUCOs they're active with, like Jalen Williams, who I think they got a good shot with. And then there's other guys. I don't want to give away what my targets are, but there's another one in there. He's committed to another school, but I think FSU is going to land him. So he will be in there that I'll discuss that. And as far as the targets coming up. So I think defensive tackle and offensive tackle is really the 2 main positions they really want to shore up. That's a kind of a big deal. Defensive end is also big, but I think they're really serious that they really want to add more in those trenches, especially with you losing Marvin Wilson, Corey Durden, and who knows if Robert Cooper goes pro after this year. So you want to prepare yourself, and I think they really want to load up at that position. So hopefully I answered everything there. I was trying to detail as I can. There's you some JUCO names, guys, that I've confirmed. I can honestly tell you guys there's like 13 to 15 guys named JUCO names that I could have thrown out there that I've heard a little bit about, but nothing from the FSU contacts. So I wanted to stay focused on guys that I'd heard at least some buzz about. I didn't want to just give you a bunch of names, and I wanted to give you like 2, 3 guys that I know that I think FSU could be involved with.
Right on. Oh, I'm trying to take a phone call there. Whoever's been trying to call, you can give us a buzz. I'll get it working. Promise. Trying to not interrupt Michael when he's in the middle of a heater. Okay. Let's see here. Brandon asks, did y'all talk about Bryce Langston tweeting FSU's his dream school? No, we haven't talked about that.
That was interesting because that was really interesting because I had always assumed that Florida was his dream school. And I always wondered why he still, listens to FSU. He still calls FSU a lot. That was interesting to me. I mean, that was something, even doing this for 19, 20 years, I'm surprised by certain things. And that was one thing that caught me by surprise because I had always envisioned that Florida was the dream school, but obviously not, and Florida State is. Now, his top 2 are Florida and LSU, but I think Bryce is really watch what this team does on the field with FSU. I think if they're good, you can definitely throw FSU in that group of top 3. Now, I didn't do a target up down him because he's basically said he's down to LSU and Florida. But like I said, when I start hearing more about him interested, I think he'll probably, if FSU improves the product and they show a good product on the field, I'll probably add him. But I'm not going to overreact to, kids in their dream schools. But that is interesting.
Right on. All right, Michael, we've had somebody who's patiently waiting on the phone. Who we got on the line?
Walker McGee.
Walker McGee, man, what's going on? So the way this is going to work is that you won't be able to hear Michael, but Michael can hear you. So feel free to ask your question and then hang up the phone and you'll be able to hear his answer. So let it rip, Walker.
All right. So I was just wondering, I haven't heard anything lately about a recruit, Chandler Pittman. He's out of Mississippi, and that's where I'm from. He's from my hometown, I think.
Where are you from, Walker?
McGee, Mississippi.
There we go. Home of the Mangums.
Yeah, home of the Mangums. Yeah, that's all we hear about around here. But anyway, I was just wondering. I knew he visited in the spring, and I was just wondering if there was anything going on there. Because I remember, I think he decommitted from Ole Miss. But anyways, that was just my question. Just a question about him.
All right, Walker. Well, if you want, you can hang up and listen to Michael, or you can do what you got to do. And at the 15-minute mark of the replay, he'll be answering your question. But Michael, go ahead and let everybody that's listening to the podcast and the stream know.
Yeah, it's a good question. Chandler visited FSU in the spring early. I think it was one of those right before junior days. Then committed to Ole Miss because that was kind of the team that everyone thought, and then decommitted from there. He's a guy that I know Dillingham talks to. I wouldn't put him as like a major. They're pushing hard for him. I think the push is medium right now, but he's certainly a guy that they are at least engaging with. He kind of stole my thunder because I was going to actually put Chandler in my next batch of targets, not the one that we're already releasing, but the next one. But there is talk, but I don't sense a major push yet. Now, maybe they're waiting to get some guys on board that they've been really locked in on, like, Joshua Burrell. Maybe they're waiting to get one or two, and then they'll go after guys that are slot that can do what Chandler does, which he's very electric. If anybody hasn't watched his film, very good film. So hopefully that answers your question. They are in contact. There is they have been talking some, but I don't know how. I don't think it's like major serious right now. But he's a guy I'll check on this week, guys. I'll give a call to and see where things are at kind of with him and FSU.
All right, right on. Mickey, Mississippi. It's like smack dab between Jackson and Hattiesburg for our viewers who are not in the state of Mississippi.
I've never been to Mississippi, by the way.
Yeah, man. I'll take you some time. It's a beautiful place. You'll love it. I promise. Let's take another question from our valued subscribers over on warchant.com. This one is a question about a range of things, Michael, kind of like the high end, kind of the low end. So let me pull it up here. T. Greason, 1, been around since 2007. Shout out. What is the ceiling? What is the floor for this class?
I like that question.
As we sit here on May 27th with nobody being on campus for the last 2 months and no one coming back on campus for another 2 months, at least in terms of recruits.
Yeah, but I like that. It's direct, straight to the point. I've kind of said in the last chat, and I'm going to stick by what I've said, is I think top 15, a little above top 15, maybe in the teens, maybe 13, 12, would be a very good place for this class. I think that will be a very good. Now that's where I expect them to be. Now the floor would be obviously top 10 if you can get in the top 10. I think that would put it. But I think top 15 would be a very good job by this staff when you consider they didn't have any spring. They're now not going to be able to host visitors till like August 1st. So basically, essentially, the season. That's when they're going to be able to host recruits. And so if you can get top 15, which I think is definitely attainable, I think that's a solid job by this staff. And then you go into 2022 and it's balls to the wall, top 5, top 10 classes. They should start getting these Rivals 100, Rivals 250 guys consistently. They should start getting some 5 stars because they will. At that point, they would already establish what they are. And so kids, that's the biggest thing I tell people. Why are other schools getting – because they've seen them. They don't know what Mike Norvell is. Not everyone's watched Memphis football all year long the last 2 years. So they have to see what it's going to look like when he gets his hands on these guys. And once that happens, it's going to be a large flush of visits. I expect my life to be very hectic in August and during the season where these kids are consistently coming in and visiting. And if they show the product that I think they're going to show based on what I've seen with their preparation and how they've handled stuff in the spring, I think you're going to get what your wish is, where you're going to see an upstick and excitement and upstick in this class, and I think they'll start shooting up higher. But all the people panicking in May, it's like I understand people get concerned because other teams get commits, but it's not a big concern, guys. I'm not that majorly concerned with things that are going in May. Because here's the thing. I just listed you JUCO guys. Okay, that doesn't even count guys that are already committed, which is over close to 700 now. 700 guys that are committed. There's going to be a lot of decommitments. There's also going to be new targets. So you can't, and the thing is, you can't sign until December. So all these kids that committed, they're going to take visits to FSU. Guys like Garner Langlow that's committed to Auburn, he's going to visit FSU. There's going to be guys that consistently visit FSU at numerous positions. Now, that could be the case as well with guys that have committed. Then I hear also other people mention, oh, it's just 3-star U. They just have 3 stars. Well, broke down, I took a look at the commitment list. Well, they have the one kid they got a commitment from, Kevin Knowles. He's very highly regarded. He's going to be a 4-star, in my opinion. Eventually, he'll be a 4-star. You already have linebacker Brandon Jennings also in the class. He's a high 4-star. I think he's got 5-star potential. Then you have one of the hotshot quarterbacks out there in Luke Altemeyer, who's a 4-star already. The only guy, and then you also have Joshua Farmer, who I think is going to be a 4-star. Everyone that's watched that kid sees the type of skill set that he's going to bring to that strong, side defensive end position. So I think he has 4-star ability where you can see him being a 4-star as well. Hunter Washington's already a 4-star. And then the only 3-star I think you have is DeQuavion Fuller, which is Quayshawn's brother. And I've said a few times on the board, I'll be surprised if he's remains in this class. I just think they could do better as far as that position. So I'm not convinced that he's going to be in the class. So if he's not in the class, that means you have, and those guys turn out to be 4-stars, that means you have no 3-stars in your class. So what are we really talking about here? It's like,
Amen, Michael.
What are we talking about here? So I think they're doing fine. They could be doing better. Yes, they're going after several guys that are listed right now in the Rivals database as a 3-star. But my main thing, what I look at is, one, you really do your research on who's offered them. And then 2, I really break down the film when I watch them. And I say, look, this guy's a low 3-star, high 3-star, or 4-star, or even 5-star. It comes to that. But I think the main thing is you have to break down the film. It isn't about what a ranking is in May. How many times do we see Rivals and whatever media outlets do their rankings where these things fluctuate and change throughout the year? It happens every year. So I wouldn't get caught up in what the rankings are right now. I get caught up more in what the talent is.
All right. Well said. Hey, we've got somebody who's been waiting on the line for 5 minutes. So I'm going to turn it over to them, let them ask their question, and then you won't be able to hear Michael through the phone, but if you want to hang up afterwards, you'll be able to hear Michael answer over the computer, man. So who we got on the phone? Let it rip, man.
Ranye.
Oh, Ranye, man, you've been hanging in the pocket for a long time, man. Appreciate you. Gwinnett County in the house. What's on your mind, man?
So I know we were recruiting Joshua Burrell out of Columbia, South Carolina, at Michael High School, 6'2" receiver. He lacks a lot of speed. He's a big physical guy, but he's not too fast. You think we try to set up a package deal for his brother? He has a twin brother on the team also, Jordan Burrell, plays safety, real physical. Wondering where they're going after him as a package deal, but trying to get Joshua by himself. And what's your thoughts about that, Michael?
Good question. Joshua Burrell out of South Carolina. He's a guy that has been the talk on the message boards. He's a guy I forecasted a few weeks ago, maybe a week ago or so. Big physical guy. You need those. You can't. Not everyone can be speed merchants, and it's not slow, but he's not. His strength in his game is not his speed, but his separation, how he gets with his physicality, can do a lot of things with great eye coordination, great hands, very good in the red zone. On tape wasn't fast either, guys, and he was pretty good. So, I mean, I think you have to have a mixture of certain guys in your offense. Now, as far as the package deal, Jordan, Burrell, he's the other his twin brother. He also visited in the spring. He's a guy they're evaluating. I don't think there's some package deal though, because I don't sense Norvell being a guy that believes in the package deal thing. I think they are evaluating him, and if they do take him, it's because they like Jordan. It's not because they're just trying to get Joshua. I don't see them going that direction. But they are talking. He is a guy they're quite interested in. They haven't offered yet, but if they do offer, it's because of Jordan. It's not because of Joshua. I don't see Norvell being a coach that's big on the package deal thing, because he could have done that a long time ago with several prospects. But I think he's just a guy that they're monitoring right now.
All right, very well. Hey, let's take some questions off YouTube real quick. How about Mario Williams 1, Williams 13? Who's the best offensive lineman we have a shot at getting, Michael?
Wow, that's a good question. I would say Lawrence Seymour from Miami Central. He's committed to Miami, but I've always heard that FSU's been a school that's been really high on his radar. I think there's a lot of talented offensive linemen that they're after, even though they are listed as 3-stars. I think there's some good ones in there. Terrence Ferguson's in there, but I mean, George is involved, so any prospect George is involved with without showing your product on the field is going to be tough to win that battle. I'm really high on the Bryson Estes kid. I mean, he can play all 3 positions in center, tackle, and guard. I actually hear he plays a lot of tackle. So I think he's a guy that could end up at that position. FSU's really high on him, and I have him forecasted already for FSU. But I would say Lawrence Seymour off the top of my head is the guy to watch for. And I would also watch for Garner Langlow. That's a guy that they're heavily still recruiting. They're not going to let up on their pursuit there. I think there's going to be a lot more, guys that enter the picture. But if I had to pick one, I'd go with Seymour. Just there's constant communication there, and he's really close with Maurice Smith. I think there's a legitimate shot that FSU could pull that. He was in my target list that we just published this week. So I think people can read up on him. But I think the board will continue to expand, as I've said before. But Seymour is the guy that I would circle right now.
I finally am able to get him on the screen as you're done with your answer. I couldn't find his Rivals profile for a while. I'm like, who are they recruiting? But he's a 4-star. He's legit. Yep. Miami Central. They're pretty good. They know a thing or two about football down there. How about Champ G? He's got a rapid fire. Who's the favorite for Quentin Somerville, Corey Collier, Terrion Arnold, Keon Coleman? Give me all your information for free, Michael. All of it.
Well, Quentin Somerville, I think early on, the good news for FSU there. I think Michigan is probably holds the edge right now, but I think he's going to take his official visits. That's going to be a big deal. He's really tight with Dillingham, and I've heard that he's really clicked with Coach JP, the defensive ends coach, lately. I think they've really connected. So I think he's building a closer bond. He really likes Norvell. I think he just wants to see what FSU's about. Right now there, I'd say Michigan. Corey Collier, that stock's kind of dropped a little bit. Most people had him going to Clemson. Then I heard Clemson, he wasn't a take there for Clemson, even though they are listed in his top 5. FSU is a dark horse there, but I've kind of pulled back myself of getting too excited until I see him on campus. I have heard through people that are close to Collier that he is highly interested in FSU, but I want to see what he says about FSU once he visits. He plans to take some visits. I would say Florida probably the edge, just because it's been Florida and Clemson for a while. I don't think he's a take for Clemson. Georgia's also in the mix there. I think as long as he waits to take official visits, watch out for FSU, because they're going to be a player if they can get him on campus, because obviously his dad played at FSU. He loves FSU. There's definitely interest in there, but to me that interest needs to be shown by Corey to get on campus before I think that FSU's a major legit shot. Terrion Arnold, Bama FSU battle. Season's going to have a big dictating on as far as where that thing goes. I think everyone thinks Alabama's like a major favorite. Alabama also offered them in basketball. Would not surprise me if FSU did that, just because they like him, from what I hear, as a hoops prospect too. So I think if FSU offers a basketball thing, I think it's going to be interesting. But I think the whole thing that with Terrion Arnold that goes with him is the fact is, what do they do on the field? If they look like a much improved team, and I'm not saying you got to win 10 games, but when I say much better product where the defense is more aggressive, the defense looks like they know what they're doing, the defense is making plays and turnovers. You don't have to. That's why I say when I say better product, people automatically think wins. It doesn't have to be wins like that. It could be, you could be between 7 and 9 wins, but if your product is better, you can tell it, and kids can tell it. So I think if the product's better, FSU is it's going to be an interesting battle with Terrion Arnold and Keon Coleman. I think they sit in a good spot with him currently, from what I hear. I think he's very close to David Johnson, which everyone knows, but I think he's a guy that they've been high on for a while. They're one of the major schools that offered him, and they stuck with him. He was actually going to visit in the spring, so I think once he visits, it would not surprise me if he clear-cut comes out and says FSU's my leader. But David Johnson's all over that one. That's one where I think at this point, I think FSU sits in a pretty good spot.
All right, man. Look at you, Michael. Way to rip through all that. I would have answered 2 of them and then been like, hey, pay my electric bill and I'll answer the rest of them for you. But let's go back to as I'm just trying to, I can't even find his comment to turn it off now. So it's just going to be stuck there the rest of the day. You won, Champ G. Let's get back to the premium recruiting board. Let's take a question from over there. And then we'll open the phone lines back up. I'm trying to juggle the fine line of letting you folks call in, but then letting Michael answer questions and not having to interrupt them. So it's a work in progress, as are most things in this life we live. Anywho, I can't even read this guy's name. I got to go on this screen. Fies_9. He spells it with numbers. He's one of the cool kids, Michael. We probably wouldn't be able to sit with him at the lunch table in high school. What needs to happen for the defensive line recruiting to pick up? The numbers say Odell puts more defensive tackles in the league than the majority of schools, but it seems like FSU is struggling to get elite defensive linemen right now. Does FSU just need to identify and get on these kids sooner, or is the overall product the past few years making this a bigger mountain to climb?
I think the latter is the best point you made, and I think that's the biggest issue. Is the last 2 years were a train wreck. Odell has shown when you surround him with other good coaches, he's very solid. He can get elite guys. He can pull those guys. He's very personable. He's a guy that's that recruits all love. He's one of their favorite recruiters, and the guy is a legend. He knows his stuff. He's taught some of the best. The guys he's put in the NFL speaks for itself. The guys that he's developed, like Derek Nunati, where a lot of people thought, oh, yeah, he'd be a serviceable guy, and he ended up having a very solid career at FSU. So he does a good job of developing. Kids and parents and families still feel that way. I think it's more of when you have a bad product, it's hard to sell that to kids as far as on the defensive side of the ball when there's constant problems, as far as defenses. It's no secret when Jimbo Fisher was here, he recruited pretty darn well. You're talking about Marvin Wilson, Eddie Goldman's, pretty good guy, pretty solid guy. So I think the main thing is you have to – he's not a position coach like that. You need to have – and this goes for a lot of teams where you have to have other guys good around that, especially the coordinators, that they're on point. And then that will really highlight what Odell is. Now, I will point blank say it, like this is a show me year, where they need to get some talented defensive tackles in this class. As I mentioned at the outset of this thing, this is a position that they really want to hit hard. I think FSU feels very confident that they're going to have a solid class of defensive tackles in this class. They feel pretty good. Tywan Malone's one I think that you have to really circle. He's a 4-star. I think Rebels 250 type of kid, really high up there. There's a lot of other guys. I'll wait for our targets updates to come out where you can view everything. But there's several guys that they're involved with. Like I said, I could see them signing like 3 or 4 in this class. I think this is a year where they're really going to lock in, and I think their success with Durden, Wilson, Cooper, those guys are going to play a big role into them even pulling even bigger names. So I think it's a show me year for that defensive tackle position, but I think the guy hit the nail on the head with the question of his later part was, is it dysfunctioning or the lack of team being good or defense being good or whatever affected. I think that's affected Odell. I mean, Odell's shown when he has good coaches around him, the guy really succeeds and takes it to another level. But when you have different things with the wheels off the wagon, where with your defense, that's a problem. So you can't expect a defensive tackle coach to just pull in guys left and right if their kids aren't sure about that defense. So I think that had a decent effect. Now, Odell's been there for a while, so we don't know how many more years he's going to coach, but this is a show me year for him to get some talented guys. Doesn't necessarily have to be can't miss 5 stars, but needs to be guys that can come in there, impact guys. I think Manny Rogers was a good pickup last year, but I think they were hoping for 2 or 3 more in that class that they maybe missed on. But a lot of that, like I said, FSU was a train wreck or whatever you want to call it the last 2 years. It was not a pretty situation. So it's hard for a kid to commit to something that they don't even know who's going to be there. So definitely a show me year, but I think defensive tackle position is going to be something is going to make or break when you watch this recruiting class because it's going to say a lot.
Well said. I lied. Let's take another question from the Premium Recruiting Board before we open the phone lines back up, 850-792-5730. This comes from New 8 Deuce Dre. Sounds like another pretty cool dude. I don't know if we'd be able to hang out with him in high school. Any kids that the fans may not see talked about much, Michael, but have a real chance to end up in this class, like Hunter Washington, for example. Seems like he committed the same week I started seeing his name linked to us.
Yeah. Well, he's been linked to FSU for a while. It was just we didn't know how much they were talking until probably a few weeks before he decided. I don't think there's I think that's why I do these target breakdowns, though, to give you new names. I think Keon Coleman's a guy that people don't talk about as much and is kind of put out. And I think Joshua Burrell, receiver is another one where until the last few weeks, he wasn't really a guy that, heavily, talked about too much. I would say Tywan Malone is a guy to watch as well. I mentioned him in the outset about defensive tackle. He really, really likes Odell. I've heard his family has really hit it off with Odell. So that's a guy that they're certainly heavily involved with. I think most of the other ones I've kind of touched on those guys. And I will touch on them when we have the prospect breakdown when that's released. We did the offense and the defense is coming up. I'm going to work on another batch, which is a third set of totally different guys to also watch. But those are kind of the few that jump out to me that came out of the blue. I think the rest of them, I think people pretty much know. I've kind of covered them in the breakdowns. And I guess one more guy I would say is probably Ishmael. He's a defensive end, was committed to not committed to Miami, but kind of a lean there. His last name, I'm losing track of my train of thought as far as that, but maybe Aslan can pull that up. Defensive end Ishmael, but he's already got an FSU offer. He's from the Miami area, but he's another guy that
Jabari, right? Cousin Jabari.
Yeah, Jabari Ishmael. Sorry, guys, I didn't have it top of my head.
Oh no,
I'm doing a lot of this stuff on the fly, so. But he's a name I think to get familiar because I think he's a guy that seriously wants to visit FSU and is highly interested. So those are just a few that are off the top of my head.
Very well. Well, hey, Michael, phone line's not ringing. So let me take another question. I'm going to skip
Okay.
over the next question from New 8, Deuce Dre, because he already got the question in, and we got a lot to get to. But you'll answer it because you answer everybody's question on the premium recruiting board.
Yeah.
Let's hop ahead to Okie Knoll. It's been around since 2003. Namaste.
Good dude.
What is the deal with the culture issue that exists with us and our inability to recruit tackles from junior college, portal, or high school kids? Well, that's presumptuous, isn't it, Michael? I don't think there's a culture issue.
I don't think there's a culture issue. I think there's a stinking up the field issue where they just have not looked good on the field. You haven't had a good offensive line in a while. Even the line that won the national championship in 2013, I wouldn't call that elite. I mean, so you probably had
they performed elite. I mean, they weren't recruited or ranked. They were played elite.
They were above average. Let's put it that way. They were good. I mean, you got to think about how many times did Jameis get sacked in that game against Auburn? Like a billion.
I mean, it happens.
Yeah, my point is they were good, but they weren't great. They were good. Let's call them good.
Disagree.
Okay.
No, I'm not going to call them good. They're great.
Okay. Aslan says they're great. But in my opinion, so you haven't had, it's been like, 8 years, since they've been really good as far as on the offensive line. So kids have to see that on the field. They have to see. I am totally sold on what I see from Alex Atkins. I've told people about, what I think of him. He's one of my favorite coaches they have. I think he's going to do a tremendous job. But kids still need to see the product on the field. Now they've added some, pieces the last 2 years that are good prospects that he has a chance to develop. But we still have to. They have to show it on the field, and when they show that, then you'll start seeing the 4 and God forbid they finally get a 5-star offensive tackle. But I think that will happen. I don't think there's any culture problem. I think it's just kids have to know what they're going into, and when you've been so putrid at that position for so long, it's hard to sell a kid on that. I don't care if you're screaming at the top of their lungs, and that's what everyone says. This coaching staff should get all these guys because we can promise immediate playing time, but immediate playing time means nothing if you don't show the product on the field. Kids got to be sold on what they're going into. But that's the main thing. And I think that starts. I'll just make a prediction. I think they're going to be, I wouldn't say significantly better, but I definitely think they're going to be better on the offensive line this year. I think they're making the changes they needed to. Nothing against the guys that didn't work out. I feel bad for Christian Meadows with the DQ. Mike Arnold, I didn't see that working out really well, so it didn't really shock me. But what they're doing is they're maximizing the roster and they're cleaning up this roster. And this roster does need to be cleaned up. So I think that's the main thing. And they're already addressing they're working hard on the transfer portal. They're working every avenue to totally change this offensive line. You can see it with every move they're making. But at the same time, kids and recruits like 2021, 2022, and 2023 and beyond, they need to see that kind of product on the field where they know what they're getting into before they sign with FSU. You can't just say every year, oh, we have a major need. Nobody has a need more than FSU does at offensive tackle. That means nothing if they're not sold on the product. So the product has to change.
Hey, man, let's do a little speed round, shall we?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's go back to the PRB. Reddick Knoll, unless he's committed by the time we do this, which I don't think he has. Anything new on Houston transfer offensive tackle Jared Williams?
It's a good question. I still think it's FSU, Miami, Baylor. I hear connections with all 3 of those. I've been told none of those schools know or feel they're getting him. There's no forecast I would make right now because none of those 3 schools feel good. He was possibly going to maybe do something over the weekend, but he hasn't done anything yet. He still talks with FSU daily. I've heard he talks sometimes twice a day to FSU. So they are working hard I mean, he's certainly their top target. I don't know which way he's leaning. There's more ties to Baylor, so if you held a gun in my head, I would probably say Baylor just because there's more ties there. Obviously, his former quarterback is at Miami, but I think Baylor would be the bigger threat to me than Miami just because there's more connections. But there's a better chance to play at FSU compared to Baylor. So right now, it's still up in the air. I don't have a definitive leader in that case. I've tried, I've pushed, I've talked to Baylor people, I've talked to Miami people, I've talked to or people around Miami's program or people that I trust. Obviously, same with FSU. Right now, I haven't gotten an indication of who leads. But if you held a gun in my head, I guess I would say Baylor.
Nobody hold a gun to Michael's head. He's a good young man.
Okay.
Next question. Maxwell Gibbs, Amari Harvey, Corey Collier, Terrion Arnold. They all want to commit, let's say. Would the staff accept commitments from all three?
Absolutely. They would in a heartbeat. Harvey, I think they look really good for right now. I think he sits you really good. I've already covered Collier and Arnold. So, yes, definitely they would take all three of those guys. Arnold can play safety or corner. Some people like him more at safety. Some people like him more corner, but that's the kind of stuff you figure out when they get to college. But obviously Harvey's a pure safety. And then I think Collier's more of a safety as well. But they would definitely take all three of those guys. You're not turning those guys down. I don't care if that means you have to take an additional safety, so be it. But, I can't see them turning down those guys.
Let's take a quick one from YouTube. Jerry Ingram. Hey, Michael, so are you saying that we get 65% of the guys we're going after or a little more? Less, right? They're going after like 100 people, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be less than that, Jerry, but I'm not saying that at all. That's why I've tried to do these target things where I break down the skinny of everything. We've done 2 sets of them now. I'm going to have a third set, and then after that, I'm going to do a full hot board that's got every guy that's in there. I don't put percentages on stuff as far as the guys they're going after and it certainly wouldn't be 65% because they're going after a lot of guys. So no, they definitely wouldn't hit on that. But I will say this, I talked to 2 of my best FSU contacts and they feel very good about where things are trending with this class, what they can get and what's going to happen when they start the season and when kids see this team on the field. They're very confident, the word I get, they're very confident of the product they're going to put on the field. Now, obviously the quarterback position will dictate a lot of that and what happens with that, but that's kind of their mindset going into the season from what I hear. So that's why I say people getting restless, like wait till the season starts, guys. Let things go out, let things trickleate and go from there before you hit the panic button and say the ship is sinking until then. And I've said this numerous times on the message board, recruiting is just getting started. Guys, you can pretty much make this just call this month February because that's what it's basically like because you're just getting started. You're going to get started. Kids, they're committed. They're going to go through all the cycle again of being recruited again. There's going to be new targets. There's going to be JUCO guys, which FSU's already started going after those guys. I mentioned defensive lineman. Jalen Williams is one guy they already going after. It's a JUCO. There's, I think, a defensive cornerback that's also JUCO that they're going after. And then offensive tackle, I think, is going to be heavily induced where the JUCO product, where they're going to go push for JUCO guys in the JUCO market. And the transfer portal market is going to be an area where FSU hits hard because we're talking about 6 or 7 they landed from transfers last year. So I don't see that slowing down. In fact, I think it's going to be higher until they're going to do whatever they got to do to fix this roster. So I don't see that slowing down until they get somewhat comfortable about, okay, these are the group of guys we need to compete with the Clemsons and the Floridas and all the other top teams on their schedule. But they're not going to stop hitting the portal until each position that's a weakness is addressed.
I was going to try to look for something positive to spin this as, just because, listen, with campuses being closed for recruits, they can't come on campus and make their visits, and they can't talk to the coaches because of the quiet period and all that kind of stuff. So my thinking was like, well, we keep talking about how important it is for this program, for this team, this coaching staff to put a good product on the field, win a game. And I just imagine if they're able to win that first game, how they can maybe approach that as kind of like a full court press on some guys. Like, hey, listen, we just showed you what we can do. This thing's going to fill up fast. Do you want a seat on this thing or not? But the unfortunate problem is that the big games that they started off with are all non-conference games by and large. Not that the Sanford game was a big deal, but like if they were to beat West Virginia and Boise State, that'd be a big deal. That would be a lot of good sort of momentum and traction for them. But as we sit here again, it's May, it's early. Like if those neutral site games, if those non-conference games aren't played, well then like Florida State, like I'm trying to look at the schedule. Like they don't have an ACC game until the 3rd of October.
Mm-hmm.
Now imagine they probably bump some of these things up, but then after that, your next game would be Clemson. So it's like you don't have a big runway to land this plane on to show kids about how good you're doing if the schedule is kind of shaken up a little bit. But again, that's perhaps a question for another episode. But let's get back to the Premium Recruiting Board. Let's let the people talk. Michael, they don't want to hear me talk, so let me pull it up right here. This comes from XDQ004. I think that's his password for his Wells Fargo banking login. We just got to find out what his username is. We know the password. 2 questions, Michael. Of the recruits that we realistically have a chance with, who is the most important recruit to land from the 2021 class?
Well, I
think Luke Altmaier. Luke.
That's always important. Offensive tackles, obviously.
Would you say that, Michael? Let's say they get a 4-star. I don't know if there's anybody 5-star that they're in with, but let's say they get a Rivals 250 offensive tackle that we feel pretty good about, maybe a little bit cut below Dante Lucas. Would you put a person like that above a Luke Altmaier?
Yeah, because offensive tackles is what they need, and my answer is going to focus on what's going to change their roster. A Tywan Malone at defensive tackle is a big deal. Like that's a very important recruit for FSU if they could pull him. I think offensive lineman Lawrence Seymour, that's a very talented offensive tackle, offensive guard, wherever you play him. He's very talented. He's going to help your core, your team. So those 2 guys, I think alone, if I had to pick 2, those 2 right now, those would be 2 of mine. Chambray Jackson is another one, defensive end. He's got every school in America wanting him. FSU is recruiting their brains out for that kid. Alabama's coming after him. A lot of schools are pushing hard for him. So I think those guys just jump out to me. If I was saying that those guys would really change the dynamics if you land those guys.
All right. Second part of his question as I scroll back down here. In terms of the recruits that we have a legitimate chance of signing for the 2021 class, which offensive and which defensive recruit have the best chance to make an impact in the 2021 season?
That's interesting. I've already covered them, with Malone. Obviously, you're after Marquise Robinson. That's another one I like a lot. I think he's a 4-star talent over there in Milton, Florida. So I think he's really good. There's other defensive tackles, but Chambray Jackson's another one that I'm very high on that I think would make an immediate impact, immediately as far as on your defensive end position, because they don't have a lot of guys that can do the different things that he can do. Linebacker, you definitely have to put Brandon Jennings in there. He's definitely an impact guy. That kid, his nickname is Godzilla, but he plays like it. When you watch him, he is ferocious. He is exactly what that defense needs, which is just a guy that's going to bring it consistently. Physicality-wise, he's going to physically impose himself on you. Great speed. He does a lot of different things. And in all offense, I think that's still up in the air. I don't think there's any first impact guys, I would say, for sure yet, based on what they've landed so far. But those guys, on defense, those are the ones I know, because things we don't know offensively what they have except for Luke Altmaier. And so we're waiting on the skill guys to see who they get. And then once they start getting some skill guys, and I can kind of answer your question better.
All right. Let's go back. Stay on the PRB. We're going to wrap things up in about 8 minutes. That'll put us about an hour. You're welcome, everybody. Jepper 65-64. Are we taking 3 receivers or 2? And you don't have to worry about the Arnold or Harvey question, Michael. I mean, you can answer it on the PRB if you want, but you've talked about those guys ad nauseum tonight. So 3 or 2 wideouts.
2 or 3. It'll be one of that. 2 or 3. So I don't want to be political, but that's what I've been saying. I think the 3 depends on, the guy they're for sure sold on. It's going to be difficult because the tight end position is so big. So I think you'll have some guys that are big receivers that could end up, playing the tight end position. But I think 2 or 3. Guess I would lean more towards 3 if I had to guess. But 2 or 3 is what they want in this class.
All right. Travis Miller's got a question. Let's take Travis Miller's question. I kind of skipped ahead of a couple of people. I think we've talked about some of these questions before. But Travis Miller, 22, do you see us, Florida State, pushing for Chad Masco and Melvin Jordan again?
I don't see them pushing for Chad. I just think he doesn't fit what they like. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but I don't think he fits what they're looking for. Now, I will say that Shakiri Williams, a kid over there at Lowndes, who's the same – or not the same class. He think he's 2022. I think that's a guy that could possibly – I see them going after. Melvin Jordan, I do think they're going to push for him. He decommitted because other schools were getting involved. He wanted to take visits. He wanted to see what they're about. So that's definitely a kid that I think FSU will heavily pursue. They did not let up. Chad Masco was a situation where the fit wasn't right. FSU wasn't pushing. Got that from several people really tied into FSU that's not a guy that they're just going a different direction. They want to go a different direction. But Melvin Jordan is definitely one that I see them heavily pushing for. I don't think there was any problems from the FSU side as far as how much they want him with Melvin. I think it was more Melvin wanting to see more things out there since he hadn't really visited anywhere.
Travis Miller had another question, but you'll be able to answer that on the PRB for him. GCGABR. Hey, Michael. Anything on Destin Payson?
Well, the thing with Destin, he was going to commit in the spring. I think he probably would have committed at their spring game. He was going to visit a few schools in between then and go to FSU last. And I think he was going to pop then. I still feel very good about Payson. I think FSU sits in an excellent spot. That doesn't change. Nothing changes my mind with that. I don't think there's anything that's led me or made me pump the brakes or anything. Even with the pandemic, I just can't see another school jumping in there that's going to change his mind as far as what he likes. Now, people say, well, why do you commit? Thing is, FSU is the one that wants him to take these visits so he knows for sure. They don't want any surprises. They want, like I said before with Coach Norvell, the kids want to know he wants the kids to know what exactly they're getting into, but they also want to know that, okay, you've seen everything you need to see. Now, they're not going to put in the policy where once you commit, you can't visit other places, but it helps kids being sold on stuff when you encourage them to go check every place out you need to check out and then come here. But I feel my opinion doesn't change. My forecasts are strongly to FSU for Payson.
Let's stick with the PRB, my friend. This comes from SFLA Noelman. He's been around since 2002. That's awesome. Would you say Jalen White and Quan Powell are the 2 kids being focused on at running back? And who do you feel we have a better shot at? Seems like White is fading a bit with some of the SEC schools starting to pay more attention to him. I like them both equally after watching their film.
Both have really good film. People get so locked in that go put in the film of Quan Powell, and you tell me that kid is an electric and dynamic and jump out to you. But even though he is listed a 3-star. I think those are two of the most realistic targets. I wouldn't say they're the main two because there's probably several guys that they're involved with that probably slip in my mind that I'd have to go through every one of the targets and focus on. But those are probably the most realistic guys, that they can, probably pull in this class. I think both are highly recruited when you look at who's recruiting them. SEC schools are recruiting both of these kids hard, so I think they're the most realistic. I personally like Jalen a little more when I watch Jalen. I think both are great. I think you're splitting hairs with them, but if I had to pick one, I just like Jalen a little bit more. But that's just me. I like his speed. I like the different things, different advantages he can give you in the passing game, and just with his speed, he's tremendous. But Powell is probably the most undervalued guy on the War Chant, on the premium recruiting board, that people don't talk about, because I'm telling you, this kid's going to be special. I mean, I personally watched him in person. This kid is very dynamic. He's got everything you're looking for in a running back, and everything that Norvell and them like in a running back, as far as a guy that can excel in special teams, a guy that can excel in as far as running between the hashes, and a guy that can be dynamic when you need big plays. So I think right now those are two of the most realistic. And then, but I like Jalen a little bit more if I had to pick.
All right, man, let's do the last question. There's plenty more over on the PRB that Michael will get to. Good information that you're going to want to know. So use the promo code WARCHANT30 if you're not already a member for access. JD Smalls, 32. Any special recruiting events being worked on coming up once things open up? I know we missed big opportunities like the spring game, barbecue, etc. I know timing will be tight with making up lost practice time. What do you think, to the best of your knowledge?
That's going to be tough with a lot of schools, but I think it's something I've heard they're working on. But with you not starting until August 1st, it's going to be time consuming as far as getting that stuff set up. Do I think it happens? I'm 50-50. I'm not committing one way or the other, but it's definitely being talked about as far as something that they can do maybe in late August or mid-August or something like that they can get done. It's going to be tougher now because of the visit time and just the fact that you're going to be so locked in to hosting so many recruits once they finally open that recruiting period, assuming it's August 1st. Obviously, this is a moot point with this question if they delay this thing until like August 31st. But if they allow visits to happen on August 1st, yes, I think it's a possibility that you could see like a barbecue or something like that they put together.
All right, boom. There we go. So in sum, Michael, everyone needs to continue to be patient, and you see encouraging signs that once things open up and they're able to interface with these recruits, business will start picking up.
I think you just need to recognize what you're going through. You're going through a pandemic where kids are committing like crazy just to get us. So most of them are just for a spot. I'm not saying people be patient. I understand people being pissed off. I get it. I see it, and I could, if I was a fan, looking at that from a fan's perspective, I'd probably feel the same way they do. Offensive line recruit, I'd feel the same way. I'd be concerned every day until that situation's remedied. But at the same time, for me, for my job, I look at it, I'm like, it's May. Kids are going to decommit. New targets are going to emerge. I've already listed some JUCO offensive tackles. There's going to be more. Like I said, there's like 15 guys that I've heard that I could have listed, and there's going to be more targets. So it's going to be a long year. It's going to be a roller coaster year of recruiting for a lot of teams. Like Tennessee's off to a great start. What happens with Tennessee if Tennessee starts losing again? And those kids decommit, things open up. It's just this whole process is just getting started. My thing is recognize what you have right now. Recognize what the situation you're in right now. FSU cannot control the fact that they can't show a spring game, host recruits. They can't control that stuff, but what they can control is what they show on the field. So my thing is, be wary in understanding what situation you're in, and the fact that this is just the beginning. Now, I will say, I'm going to answer all your questions on the Premium Recruiting Board right after this. Probably going to grab a quick bite to eat first, but I'm going to get started on that, maybe drop a few nuggets and cover some guys that we talked about today. So I'll break that down. Going to work on a third batch of targets. Then after that, do a hot board. But that's kind of where we're at with things. I think there's several guys I think that FSU could be getting that I think is coming soon. I think Joshua Burrell, Brian Estes, even though he says he's going to take visits, it would not surprise me if he went ahead and jumped on board offensive lineman. I think even Destin Pazan, I mean, he could get tired of the process and jump on in, but I think there's several guys that are on the verge, and I get the sense that FSU feels there's several guys that are right there that are getting close to popping. But the main thing is just, I don't want to say patience because nobody has patience, so I would say just observe the situation you're in and also understand how many commits have been made and how this thing all changes with new targets and the excitement level of when, say you do what you said, Aslan, win against West Virginia, excitement's going to go through the roof. Excitement's going to change and shift. So that's what I say when I say just recognize the situation.
Right on. Well said, Michael. Use the promo code. It's on the bottom of your screen. Head over to warchant.com. We're always up and running 24 hours a day. Michael, as always, man, thanks for your time and your knowledge, man. We'll see you again next time.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks.